Ooh, that's nice. That's really what you want to do. So when you get sod that gets really heavy, stuff like that happens too. All right, so we got a lawn here. We got a random Bermuda patch over there, which is actually kind of nice. I told him to keep it. You see the grade coming down here like this. And you see that different color grass there, that's torpedo grass. And you can tell that water sits right along this curb because it's all headed to that downspout or that drain right there. So it's dying, torpedo grass. Some people call that water grass because it likes to hang out where the water is. And check this out. In this swale right here where water sits, it killed all the native grass or all the St. Augustine grass. And what you got left is nut's edge right there. Some people call that water grasses too, or nut grass. It likes to hang out where the water is. So technically we got to bring this up and we're going to resod it with good, fresh St. Augustine sod. It's good, fresh, straight from the farm. We're going to get this done, and I'm going to kind of show you a couple different processes and things to pay attention to. First things first, sod cut out. All right, so this is easily one of the most important parts of sod install. I hear lots of customers tell us that, you know, the last time they had sod put down, a guy showed up with a lawnmower or a weed whip, and they just weed whipped it down. You know, you're not really removing any of the problem there. You're not removing any of the bad topsoil. You're not getting rid of any roots. You're not getting rid of any of the, you know, compaction. This is just the way to do it here. Yeah, it takes more work, but in the end, it'll pay off. So get rid of all that crap and start adding some new stuff in there. It's actually, you know, if you get efficient with it and you learn how to rake things up in an efficient way and not just spin in circles, you can do a pallet of sod, you know, in like an hour, really, or less, depending on how much practice you got and how many people you got working with you. But what we do is we remove the sod, rake everything into a line, and we go down the line, picking it all up. All right, so now you'll notice after sod cutting, you get this torpedo grass that, you know, gets missed along the curb here. So you can see it all the way down. So before we start amending the soil, I'm going to do a little bit of edging, and I'll show you that real quick too. You'll see the reason why I use the edger along the edge after getting the sod cut out with the sod cutter. The sod cutter doesn't get down into those little corners, so that kind of helps. This is the bread and butter of your sod install right here. This is called peat moss, and it's when you first put water on it, you'll see it's kind of hydrophobic. You know, it won't really take water, but once it gets wet and starts to break down, it absorbs water very fast, and it holds water for a period of time without turning into muck, and it drains pretty good. If you don't really understand what I mean by holding water and then also draining well, let me know. I can make another video about that because there is a thing. But what you do, this is kind of just an amendment. So you just kind of toss it down and you kind of rake it around, and all this is doing is amending the soil. It's kind of like when you add compost to a garden before putting plants in, same thing. You're not adding a bunch of new soil, you're just amending it. So you're adding concentrated, rich nutrients that is so concentrated that it will break down and add to the soil and help the composition. That's really what you want to do in this case. And since this soil doesn't actually appear to be too bad here, especially for semi-new construction, we're just doing an amending. Sometimes you need to do bulk soil, like if you have really bad soil, we'll go ahead and, you know, rip up more soil and we'll add a bunch more soil. You get good results with that too. But in most cases here in Florida, you just need a nice amendment. That's what we're doing here. I'll show you what it looks like after. But you kind of just throw it around like this. You know, get yourself a snow shovel. This stuff's pretty light and easy to work with. Don't breathe downwind from it because you'll get peat moss lung. But throw it around like this. Pay extra close attention to the sides here where it gets really hot, because during the summer when it's really baking, you'll need that right there. So this is what we'll do. Put a little bit extra along the walkway like that. And then just rake it around. I'll show you what it looks like after. This is the most important. Say what you want about peat moss. We've had so many success stories. And that right there is really all you need. You know, I had my sod cutter set to 2.5 inches. So we took out about 2.5 inches. I'm not here to fool anybody. Those roots of the torpedo grass go much deeper than that. But the more you can cut out, the slower it will be to resurface. And your goal is to get that torpedo grass to come back after the point of where you can treat for it. So you can treat for torpedo grass. It's just a slow ongoing thing. But before I get into that, let's keep the sod install videos and tips going. So that was the cutout, that was the collection of it, that was the top dressing of it, and the edging, the soil amendments and whatnot. Now we just got to get down to the sod and the sprinkler stuff. About this sod stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just making sure I'm not cutting that out. Just making sure that you get a good pattern down. So, ooh, that's nice. That's really what you want to do. So when you get sod that gets really heavy, stuff like that happens too. And when you get sod that has been wet, you pretty much just ruined all your pieces. So that's really great. I'm not cutting any of this out. This is exactly what we get paid to deal with, so that you, the homeowner, doesn't have to. Anyways, so you'll see, come over here, you see how this row right here, they're all going long ways, like this. The next row goes like this. So that way you have as little joints, little seams together as possible. If you can't go long ways and then short ways like this, what you want to do is you want to have one going this way and the next one being placed against it, staggered. That way they're like stairs stepping down, just to minimize the amount of seams that you have. Because you'll see a lot of times when you drive by somebody's house that gets sodded and they're kind of just chucking it down. You drive by in a couple weeks, you'll see all the weeds and everything. You'll see dry spots, you know, right here. You see a seam right here. If you don't kick these together, and if you've got another seam right here going straight up, you'll see a big dry spot that goes right down it. So always try to lay these short and then lay one across the top of it. A lot of guys that, you know, end up working for us think that we're anal about that type of stuff, but it ends up paying. You know, the customer gets a better lawn. Also, a lot of customers say that we're the only people who put down soil first, which doesn't make any sense, because if you buy a plant, the pot has soil in it, right? It just doesn't make any sense. Anyways, we'll go ahead and do a little time lapse so you can see this go, and then we'll move on to something else. All right, so Tessa pointed out that a lot of contractors say this too. Oh, we don't need to add any soil because there's soil on the bottom of the sod. Yeah, that's true, but there's also soil in the potted plant that you buy too. But go ahead and let that go for a while. You'll find out pretty soon you need to repot it with new soil, or you need to top dress it with mulch or compost or fertilizer, but that's a whole nother video, so I'll get into that. Why you can't just use synthetic fertilizers on your lawn to have it really turn around and start getting healthy. Hold on. So what you'll find out, this is also another video, but if you look at the bottom of this sod, does that look like sand to you or soil? Okay, so pretty much sand. So when we start thinking about what the lawn needs, no matter what kind of problem it has, most of the time you're gonna find that it's sand in there. This is pretty good because we've already pretty much amended it. But most of the time you can get sandy sod like this at most of your suppliers. But if you're really struggling with a hot, dry lawn that seems to have dead soil, you can find a place like Roundtree down there on Phillips that has muck sod. The soil attached to the bottom is actually like muddy, rich soil. And that, you'll get a little bit more soil amending out of just installing the sod than you will installing regular sod like this. But anyways, that's another video. Okay, so another really important part about sod that a lot of customers ask, oh, are you gonna make it sit flush, you know, so it doesn't stick up? And we always say, yep. And I'll tell you why. Because this sod right here I'm about to show you, we did not do. Look at that. Look at that height difference. And you're looking, you're like, oh man, what is going on here? Yes, this side has been mowed. This side wasn't mowed, but still, you can see the height difference. This sod we did do. Right here, you can see how flush that's sitting. Right, this is mowed. This is new sod. All the way around. This is all edge. We're still cleaning up, but you can see the difference here. Can you tell where the new sod starts? Can you tell? Not very easily, can you? The new sod actually starts right here. So I'm going to show you how I do that with an edger. It's important, you got to kind of make it sit down a little bit before you put the sod, but I'm going to show you how we cut the edges off. You don't need a shovel. Watch this. Another separating factor from us, you know, versus other companies is we use an edger to clean up all the edges. You shouldn't see any square edges sticking up. Everything is finished. And that right there is pretty much how you do it. You just cut the pieces off, and then you can actually take, if you got a more drastic turn, when you cut a piece off like this, you can literally just take it and flip it like this, and it will match that turn. But that's for another video. But for now, that is how you install sod. That's how Advanced Lawn and Garden installs sod. And you can pretty much guarantee, as long as you're following the watering protocols, your sod's gonna last, it's gonna do well. If you need sod in the Jacksonville, St. Augustine, St. John's area, give us a call, 904-432-6505. Thank you.